Righto, it's Alienware Chance. Now let's do the content creation comparison between the Alienware M15 and the MacBook Pro 16. And yeah, been out of commission for a few days, had influenza type A. I thought I had the old coronavirus, but I should be so lucky. Now in this video, we're going to be comparing the Alienware M15 i7 9750H with an RTX 2070 Max-Q, 16 gigs RAM, and we'll compare that to the MacBook Pro, which has an i9, but you know, it's quite interesting the results here. We'll compare it to, say, the Aura 17 as well, but mainly I'll be comparing it to the 16-inch MacBook Pro that has an i9 and the Radeon Pro 5500 8GB version, and also has 32 gigs RAM. Going to compare it for all content creation sort of stuff and see which one's better for content creation. Now, the Alienware is a gaming laptop first and foremost, so it's not made for content creation. This display I have on this model I have has a 240Hz display, which, yeah, is great for gaming, but it's probably not the best content creation display. If you want the best display, get the 4K one, which will be the OLED, and it'll be like 100% DCI P3, wide color gamut. That's where you want to be if you're a content creator. But this display is still pretty good, around 100% sRGB. Yeah, I'll give it that. It's pretty close. It's only a bit over 300 nits of brightness there, but it is very color accurate, you know, sort of what you see is what you get. Now, first things first, I want to talk about the DPC latency. I was able to use the audio fuse on both of these laptops, and I was able to get down to a 32 buffer size and no recording problems with the Alienware. So rather than use that monitor, which I don't even know if it's true or not, how accurate it is, I just recorded straight into it with 32 buffer, which is really low. You audio guys will know that, and yeah, it done it no problems, and the Mac done that too. Now let's get into 3D, and when it comes to 3D, you'll think the RTX 2070 on the Alienware will just kill it, and yeah, it does kill it for certain things. And as you can see, this is spec ViewPerf, and this tests a whole suite of 3D applications, including, you know, Cartier. We're talking 3D Studio Max, Maya, we've got SolidWorks too. And as you can see up the top there, SolidWorks, 3D Studio Max, which is very popular. Yeah, you can see that the RTX 2070 kills it there, and that's sort of like any sort of gaming laptop with, you know, RTX graphics or just NVIDIA graphics in general. They're really good for 3D Studio Max. I did use the studio drivers with this Alienware 15, so that's one thing to know. But if we have a look down the bottom there, you can see with SolidWorks that the MacBook Pro is actually faster for SolidWorks. SolidWorks is like sort of like an industry standard for making, you know, parts and, you know, all sorts of things. And it's interesting, just because you get the Pro drivers with the MacBook Pro, because you get the Radeon Pro drivers, you're getting much better performance in SolidWorks, whereas with the Alienware, you're not getting such great performance. You probably need Quadro drivers for SolidWorks, and professional drivers will make a difference. So there, you can get a screenshot there, and you can have a look. And by the way, I'll put all the Alienware sort of benchmarks on the left and the MacBook Pro on the right there. Right, now let's get into After Effects, and this is quite shocking, isn't it? Right. You're talking about an i7 in the Alienware M15 on the left, and the MacBook Pro has an i9, and look at the score difference. You can actually see the MacBook Pro is a lower score than the Alienware M15, even though it does have 2 extra cores. Of course, this is down to graphical sort of stuff. Adobe After Effects does love CUDA cores, and they have actually improved it for the Mac. I will say that you can actually use the AMD graphics for previews and stuff like that, where you never were able to use the GPU in After Effects with Macs at all. So it actually performs quite good in the Mac. But I noticed when I was making, like you might notice that I had a new logo, I was doing that in After Effects, and I'd done half, and I did notice the difference sort of like in playback with the preview with the Alienware, like a beast for, you know, After Effects. That is really good for After Effects, and, you know, PCs are good for After Effects. They're just better than the Macs in that regard, and it is one of the places where they haven't hooked onto Metal, or they haven't optimized the Adobe suite to actually perform well compared to Windows. So I know also for a fact a lot of people that do visual effects, they use Alienware laptops, and I know for a fact. So yeah, they're great for that sort of stuff. Alright, so now let's look at Photoshop, and on the left is the Alienware M15, and on the right, of course, is the MacBook Pro 16. You can see there, of course, the MacBook Pro is faster. Well, it does have an i9, so yeah, you would expect that. But look at the GPU score. You can see the GPU score is much higher on the Alienware M15, and you can imagine if it had an i9, it would be pretty close to what the MacBook Pro is. These are both great for Photoshop. It used to be Photoshop really loved AMD graphics, and they used to, kill it with Macs, but now I think the PCs have caught up. They've done some optimizations there, obviously, especially with the GPU score, because the Macs, even with weaker graphics, were performing better. They were just like AMD graphics for some reason. But yeah, add another 2 cores and an RTX 2080 to this Alienware M15, and I expect it to be the same or higher there as the MacBook Pro, and both of them you're going to love for Photoshop, so they are good in that regard. Now let's get into Premiere Pro, and these results are quite surprising. I must mention that I actually tested the MacBook Pro again because we've got a new macOS update, and they said they made some updates and improvements to H.264 for the MacBook Pro, and wow, it is performing super well now. And have a look at the Alienware M15, and you can see there it still has a higher score, even though it's an i7, so it's absolutely killing it. But where the Alienware M15 makes up its score is basically in the GPU effects, the GPU heavy effects, and the GPU rendering. That's where it's getting its score from. You can see there in the export score, that's where it's getting it. You can see the playback score, MacBook Pro 16 is better, and you'd expect that it's got an extra 2 cores. Taking everything into account, the Alienware M15 is still better. Now, for me, the most important thing is playback. And so what would you get if you had an i9 on an Alienware M15? I'll just get to that in a sec. You still wouldn't get the 66 score with playback, and I'll show you why. This test actually tests everything. It tests H.264, H.265, red footage, it tests ProRes, it tests 60 frames per second, 30 frames per second, GPU effects, CPU effects. So it tests everything, a very comprehensive test. So download this Puget Systems test if you want to know. If we have a look at this Aura 17, which has an i9, so the 2 extra cores, and it has an RTX 2080, studio drivers, 200 watt RTX 2080, and you can see there, it still gets less playback score than the MacBook Pro 16. Wow, that is amazing. Of course, the score is higher because of the heavy GPU effects, and yeah, it's going to always win in that regard, especially for exporting when you got GPU effects, or use a codec that actually renders out using the GPU. But what really amazed me here is how close the MacBook Pro is to the Aura 17, which is a mega PC. And we're still getting better playback with the MacBook Pro 16. So that very much surprised me. And we're talking to 97 watts versus something that has 2 330 watt power supplies. Yes, 2. And this is 97 watts. So whatever upgrades they've done to metal or whatever, I'm saying now in Premiere, it's still the one to beat the MacBook Pro just because of that, that playback for me. Overall, if you're talking rendering and stuff, yes, the Alienware M15 and this Aorus, yeah, they're going to kill it for that, especially if you're using GPU effects. But if you're just talking about timeline performance, and I can notice this from the scrub in the MacBook Pro, yeah, it's really good. So now let's get into my sample project. What I've tested pretty much every laptop known to man on, and as you can see there, the Alienware is what, 4th, is it? 4th. The Alienware is 4th. Very competitive. I mean, they're all basically the same sort of thing here. You can see here the improvements that the MacBook Pro has had. Now is the fastest in hardware encoding. Now on the right hand side is software encoding. In the brackets is hardware encoding, HE. Now the MacBook Pro was never the fastest at hardware encoding, but whatever improvements they've done for the MacBook Pro 16, it's just killing it now. And it's even the fastest for software encoding as well. So that is just optimizations. Adobe, you got to do some optimizations for the PC, because I don't know how a MacBook Pro, 96 watts, and a Radeon 5500 graphics, AMD, it's good graphics, don't get me wrong, but it's not an RTX 2080, and yeah, Adobe, come on. But you can see there the Alienware M15, it's very fast on the hardware encode, 3 minutes and 45. That's the second fastest there, so that's good there. And the only one it's beaten by is the Aura 17, the only PC it's beaten by, and that one is that, that monster 200 watts RTX 2080, and it has an i9 as well. So just shows you, even though it has an i7, it still goes hard, that Alienware, and it's quite interesting that it's that fast, even though it only has 6 cores. So that's good. I also tested in Lightroom and inside, like the develop module and using the brushes. Like I could not tell the difference between the two laptops. Both of them perform inside Lightroom just like butter smooth. It just, everything goes well. And for the export times, 75 RAWs to JPEGs. I actually haven't got the score there. I haven't actually written it there, but I can tell you now it's identical to the i7 MacBook Pro. So the one in the brackets there, the 1 minute 58, that's the exact same export score with the i7 of the Alienware. And this is basically a CPU test. And it's like they're all pretty much the same. They're using the same CPUs, and yeah, even cross-platform, it's very similar. Like it really comes down to how good thermally the laptop is, I guess. So anyway, I'll wrap it up there, guys. With the Alienware M15, is it good for content creation? Yes, no problems. It is good performance. You're going to love it for that. But the only downside for me is 16 gigs is not enough for content creation these days. There is a 32 gig model coming out. When, I don't know, the RAM soldered, you can't upgrade it. So, you know, you get what you get. And also you want the 4K display if you're going to be doing any serious content creation, I would say. But the performance is there. And even with this 240 Hertz display, the color accuracy is good enough to do stuff, especially if you go into the web, YouTube and stuff, and just sRGB, it's perfectly fine. So anyway, good performance, great machine. I'll catch you in the next one, guys. Thanks for watching, and until next time, tally ho.